Russian troops are slowly inching closer to the city of Kyiv, and there are big signs that Russia will launch its next big attack. Like what happened in Kharkiv on the Ukrainian capital. This is on day 6 of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. We decode in our next report for you the 5 biggest signs that Kyiv could come under fire next, that Kyiv is Russia's target.
Russia is closing in on the Ukrainian capital. Almost under siege for over 3 days, Kyiv is fighting back. But there are 5 big ominous signs of a big attack by Russian forces on Kyiv, which has so far been guarded well by Ukrainian troops. The biggest sign of an attack is Russia calling for immediate evacuation of Kyiv. Satellite images accessed show 3-mile-long tank columns on the road to the city. Ukraine is bracing for the big attack. Not only are the Ukrainian forces bolstering its defenses on the outskirts of Kyiv, citizen soldiers are also organizing suburban deployments. Ukraine is also consistently attempting to target Russian missile positions. The deployment and movement of Russian forces indicate President Vladimir Putin wants to get his hands on Kyiv as soon as possible. But why is Putin chasing the city? Kyiv is the power center and capital of Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also resides in Kyiv, and his last video traces him to the city. Putin hopes to install a Kremlin-friendly government in Ukraine once his forces take over the capital. Lastly, Ukraine's major military installations are spread around the city. While the first 5 days of attacks proved the war is not going to be a walkover, Russia is not backing down. It continues its advance towards Ukraine's crown jewel, Kyiv. With Gaurav Sawant and Rajesh Pawar in Kyiv, Bureau Report, India Today.
Team of reporters for the last many days have been getting you unparalleled coverage from the ground. Here's a report by India Today's Rajesh Pawar from the capital city of Kyiv. Air raids were witnessed amid peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. Take a look at that report.
I'm right now in my hotel in the city center, Kyiv city center, and I just heard 3 big explosions. In last 10 minutes, 3 explosions, one after another, big explosions, one of them very close to me. I believe these were the cruise missiles fired by the Russian army into Kyiv. Also, in last 15 minutes, the air alarm signal, the air alarm siren went out 6 times, warning all citizens in the city to move out of their houses and go to some bomb shelter or to metro shelter, or maybe in the basements of their houses if they have one. So if this is happening after a gap of 30 hours now, at this time, when the talks were going on, I take this as a signal that talks have failed and the war will resume now and at a much harder scale and a much bigger scale from tomorrow onwards. This is Rajesh Pawar for India Today from Kyiv City Center.
From Kyiv, let's focus on Kharkiv, which is Ukraine's second biggest city. It's been under siege now for over 100 hours and counting, because since the weekend, we've been getting you details about the battle for Kharkiv. Soon after Russia claimed that the city was on the brink of falling, Ukraine claimed it's still very much under their control. Here's a timeline of all that's played out in Kharkiv and what's in fact led to the Russian troops struggling to take control of the city.
This is how Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, looked like less than 20 days ago. After over 100 hours of being under siege, this is how the streets of Kharkiv looks now. In the beginning of February, citizens were seen storming the streets. and on February 27th, dead bodies seen lying on the same roads. So how did Ukraine's second largest city go from this to that? The image that marked the beginning, day one of Russia's full-blown invasion of Ukraine. This hazy CCTV footage would mean the beginning of the siege on Ukraine and its cities. The very same night, Russia began pounding Kharkiv. Several blasts were reported. Smoke engulfed the Kharkiv skyline. Residents of Kharkiv took refuge in an underground metro station, fearing shelling after a missile hit a residential building, injuring one person. This was the beginning of impact on people. The residents began fleeing Kharkiv, leaving homes and personal belongings. From this point on, Kharkiv began to witness actual invasion. Destroyed multiple rocket launcher Grad left in the middle of the road. Body of a soldier in Russian uniform laying near it. Residential buildings damaged. Windows broken as heavy shelling hit Kharkiv hard. Four days after Russia's invasion, the office of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russian forces blew up a gas pipeline in the country's second largest city, even as Russia's invasion continued. Videos shared by the Ukraine Special Communication Service showed fire and smoke rising from the facility in Kharkiv, with the government warning that smoke from the explosion could cause an environmental catastrophe. The relentless bombing did not deter the spirit of Ukrainians in the second largest city. Citizens took up arms to defend their land. Russian army vehicles were seen smashed, damaged, and even set on fire in what was turning out to be fierce street fighting between Ukraine and Russia on the streets of Kharkiv. On day 5 of Putin's invasion, after Russia claimed Kharkiv was on the brink of falling to the invasion, Ukraine claimed Kharkiv is still under their control and that it has expelled Russian troops. But the aftermath is this: bodies seen lying on the streets of the country's second largest city. The Battle of Kharkiv is key for Putin. Kharkiv played a particularly important role in shaping Ukraine during and after World War I. It served as the first capital of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. Today, Ukrainians are resisting the fall of Kharkiv, but the battle is far from over. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, crucial Ukraine-Russia talks aimed at essentially ending these hostilities took place yesterday, but unfortunately there was no headway that was reached. You had officials of both warring nations returning from Belarus only to regroup for a second round of talks, which is likely to take place in 2 days on the Poland-Belarus border this time. In the 3.5-hour meet that happened yesterday, Ukraine's stance was clear. It wants immediate withdrawal of all Russian troops, including from Crimea and Donbass. This meeting took place. There were intensified Russian shelling that was reported in eastern part of Ukraine. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky also signed an application for the membership of Ukraine to join the European Union amid a siege alert to the capital city of Kyiv. Meanwhile, the 11th emergency session in the UNGA, that's the General Assembly on the Ukraine-Russia crisis, will resume today. On Monday, the UNGA called for an immediate ceasefire at Ukraine, saying diplomacy, dialogue must prevail. But the reality is that dialogue did happen. there's been no breakthrough really that's emerged.
Third day on Saturday with artillery.
The Security Council addressed the issue of the Russian war against Ukraine, and the decision was not adopted due to the obvious reason. The country attempting to occupy Ukraine since 2014 has occupied the seat of the Council permanent member since 1991. Therefore, we do not accept the Russian logic that the Security Council was unable to act due to one-sided and unbalanced approach. The only guilty party is the Russian Federation.
Enough is enough. Soldiers need to move back to their barracks, and leaders need to move to peace. Civilians must be protected. International humanitarian and human rights law must be upheld. The sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders must be respected, in line with General Assembly resolutions. Yesterday, Russian nuclear forces were put on high alert. This is a chilling development. The mere idea of a nuclear conflict is simply inconceivable.
Close to 200 hours since Russia invaded Ukraine, delegations of both countries met in Belarus, as we told you. The world's eyes are, however, on two leaders, Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. Both leaders have sent out very strong messages, both very resolute and firm in their stance, both refusing to blink. The Russian president is back to nuclear saber-rattling, telling his defense minister to put his country's nuclear triad on standby, on alert duty. Putin also spoke to French President Emmanuel Macron, telling him that there will be no compromise on Russia's legitimate security interests. Putin reiterated his demand of demilitarization and denazification, as he called it, of Ukraine. The Ukrainian president, in return, sent out a big warning, asking Russian soldiers to save their lives and to leave. Zelensky has also signed an application for EU membership. He's reminded people of his country that each of them is a warrior in his last public address. War rages on. Invaders from across the border are trying to overrun Ukraine. Russian forces are relentlessly moving towards the capital. They want to take over Kyiv, and that's the objective, to get rid of the man who's rallied his country to stand and fight. That man is, of course, President Volodymyr Zelensky. And he's an unlikely hero, an unassuming wartime leader of a country that's under siege. He's the puny David of Ukraine against the Russian Goliath of a bully. A man who thought comedy was his forte got the tragic role of a president of a nation invaded. And yet it's in this role that President Zelensky has found his largest audience ever, as people across the world have hailed him. If you haven't had a chance to read about Zelensky yet, in our next report we get you all the details about his very, very interesting journey to become the president of Ukraine.
Всім добрий вечір. Лідер фракції тут, голова Офісу президента тут, прем'єр-міністр Шмигаль тут, Подоляк тут, президент тут.
His is the voice of defiance, a call from the heart that has gone out and firmed the defense of Ukraine against the forces of invasion.
I'm here to protect my wife, my family, myself, my country from the Russian invasion.
We will fight for our land and we will kill all Russians.
If somebody give me a weapon, I will fight. I'm not afraid.
Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, had everything wrong about being a wartime leader of a nation invaded. He's from Jewish stock in Eastern Europe with its history of anti-Semitism. His family spoke Russian. He grew up speaking the language of the invader. He happened to be a comic by profession.
Добрый вечер. Знаете, я сразу хочу сказать, у нас сегодня просто концерт.
In 2019, the comic actor decided to run for presidency. And people took that as a joke. He called his party the Servant of the People Party. The outcome was comic relief. Volodymyr Zelensky won 73% of the votes and promised to bring peace to the restive eastern regions of Luhansk and Donetsk. What came was war. Not with Russia, but with his Russian namesake, Vladimir.
Once again, I appeal to the servicemen of Ukrainian armed forces. Don't let neo-Nazis and Banderites use your children, your wives and old people as human shields. Take power into your own hands. It seems that it will be easier for us to come to terms with you than with this gang of drug addicts and neo-Nazis who settled in Kyiv and took all Ukrainian people hostage.
Volodymyr Zelensky was born in 1978 into a Russian-speaking Jewish family of the then Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine. His father was a professor of mathematics and his mother had studied engineering. The town of his birth, Kyiv, stands next to Babi Yar, where 33,771 Jews were shot and thrown into a ravine over the course of 2 days in 1941. Zelensky studied law and earned a degree in it, only to found a TV entertainment company. Zelensky found success in his vaudeville act. He and a few friends created a comedy troupe that became a famous act not just in Ukraine, as well as other Russian-speaking regions of a post-Soviet world. The prism through which Volodymyr Zelensky viewed the world changed when Vladimir Putin invaded the land of his birth in 2014. That was what made him take his first political step. He donated a fortune to arm the then weak army of Ukraine. He chose his side when he relocated his production company to Kyiv and began to fully master the Ukrainian language. Something that was to be a big help when he played the most successful comic role of his life. In the TV series Servant of the People, Zelensky plays a school history teacher whose rant against the rampant corruption in government gets recorded without his knowledge by a student and is posted on social media. The video goes viral, and without even wanting the job, the teacher gets elected president of Ukraine. And then, through set pieces, bumbles his way to become a heroic leader of his country. On 20th of May 2019, facts overtook fiction when the 41-year-old Volodymyr Zelensky took the oath of the highest office in Ukraine. And when the new president had to make his inaugural address, he said, "It wasn't just me who took the oath." He said, "Each of us put a hand on the Constitution, and each of us has sworn loyalty to Ukraine." It was an oath of loyalty that the unlikely politician would prove himself worthy of in the conflicts to come. Despite the fact that entertainers entering politics are viewed, if not with suspicion, but certainly with skepticism.
Наявною у нас інформацією ворог позначив мене як ціль номер 1, мою родину як ціль номер 2.
President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine is believed to be number 1 on Vladimir Putin's hit list. Western intelligence agencies have claimed this, and Zelensky himself has acknowledged it. He says his family is second on the list, but that he and they will remain in Ukraine. He categorically turned down a US offer of evacuation. Instead, he asked for arms.
Nobody will force us Ukrainians to give away our freedom, our independence, our sovereignty. But it looks like the Russian leadership is trying to do it just by the way of destroying their own country.
To prove that he is still there and not running away, the president of Ukraine has been regularly posting self-taken videos in front of the very recognizable presidential palace, telling the people of Ukraine that he is living up to his promise, even if he has to die for it. Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is playing the role of a lifetime. He has already given a performance that has made him a hit across the world. This unlikely wartime leader of his country has won the hearts and minds of people around the world. His actions has more than established the contrast with his nemesis, with whom he shares a first name, the meaning of which ironically means ruler of the world. When Vladimir Putin ordered his troops to invade Ukraine, he possibly made one miscalculation. He had not accounted for the stellar performance that his opponent was capable of giving, a role that has touched the heartstrings of audiences across the globe. Whatever be the outcome of this war in Ukraine, history will record Zelensky as the hero in shining armor, while Putin has already joined the ranks of all-time world villains like Hitler and Stalin. When the world's a stage and everyone is but an actor in it, there is no doubting that Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine stands at the edge of that stage, where life meets performance and only truth shines forth.
India has intensified its evacuation efforts to bring back stranded Indian nationals on a war footing, and this is under a mission called Operation Ganga. New Delhi is working tirelessly to safely bring back 20,000 stranded Indians in Ukraine, amid, of course, the all-out full-fledged war with Russia. To further pace up the evacuation process, India has decided to send 4 union ministers, and this is not to Ukraine but to the neighbouring countries. Ministers Hardeep Puri, Jyotiraditya Scindia, Kiren Rijiju and VK Singh will be going as special envoys of India to personally monitor the operation. And all the highlights of day 6 of Putin's invasion will be up here on India Today. We're going to continue getting you our unmatched coverage through today as well. Slipping into a short break, I'll be right back.